Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Jay's Office Hours. This week I thought we'd talk about world building, which is one of my favorite topics to teach about, and it's one that I get the most questions from new writers. I can't give an entire world building workshop in less than 10 minutes, but I can talk about different elements of world building and how I do it as a series. So today I guess is the first of the world building series. And we're going to talk about one of the basic tools that I use to world build, which is my world building Bible. And we call it the Bible because it holds all the important information about our worlds. I have 4 to show you today. I'm not going to go through everything in them, but just to kind of give you an idea of the things that I include in my Bibles. So when I start a project, I basically gather a lot of research into one place and start brainstorming based off what I learned. So if I'm writing a new kind of magic system like I did in Prospero's War, that's kind of a bastardized version of alchemy, I did a ton of alchemical research and then compiled it and then did all my brainstorming. And my Prospero's War Bible is right here, as you can see, Prospero's War World Building. It's obviously not very organized. There's like all sorts of papers falling out of it and things. But what I do in here is I start compiling notes and research. Here I have a tab on magic. I have one on different settings in the book. Did the information and background on the big covens that are in the story. I have timelines. I have character lists. I have, I'll tell you what that one is. Police procedural notes. And the interesting thing about this Bible is I was not good about keeping it up to date as I was working on the series. So I actually went back and had somebody, you can hire people to go back and read your series and compile notes on all the characters and what books they show up in and their main story points and settings and things like that. Since I'm kind of taking a break from that series, I went ahead and paid to have that done so that when I am ready to write a new story, I have all the information and I don't have to go back and search through all the books again. But I would save yourself some money and some time and do it while you're writing the book. I just was not that smart. So that's an example of a world building notebook that I kept on a series. I have a similar one for my Sabina Cain series that obviously is a little more in depth because it was a longer series. This is see, I did it in red. For my Sabina Cain series, I have all sorts of crazy notes in here. Plot points, calendars. It would probably take me as long to flip through this notebook to find a piece of information as it would for me to go back and just read the books. But it's basically a one-stop shop that you can keep track of all the big stuff that you'll need to look at as you're writing a series. And I think if you are writing a series, it's incredibly important to have this. But I've also done Bibles for a standalone novel. I just finished this book called High Lonesome Sound. It's on submission right now. And I started a world building Bible when I started working on it. And the book took me 2 years to write, so I needed lots of notes. At the beginning, I have this list of theme words that tie into the story that I used when I was revising to kind of buttress the theme of the novel and the world building and the atmosphere I was going for. I've got lists of characters and like here's a thing where I kept track of the story arcs for each of the main characters because there's like 5 point of view characters in this novel. So I need to keep track of who was doing what when. And what the goal was for that character. There's researching here on coal mining because that was a part of the story. There's lists of Appalachian like vernacular slang and things like that so that I could make sure that people sounded like they were from there when they spoke. I have story ideas. I have information on folk magic. It's just kind of a really cool place for me to keep everything. But what's interesting and what kind of got me thinking about this idea of using Bibles is that I'm kind of working on a new project that's a very different type of book. It's not paranormal or speculative at all. It's actually a historical mystery. And it's a story that I I have worked on off and on over the years, but now I'm going to sit down and actually write the novel. And what I found is that the same skills that I used to develop my made up worlds and my urban fantasies, I can apply to my historical fiction novel as well. Um, the purpose of world building is to figure out how things work in your story. Because the rules of the society that you're writing the story in help dictate the course of the story. It also helps shape your characters. And the same goes for a historical setting as it does for a paranormal one. And that is that I had to understand how society worked in this particular town that I'm writing about in World War II. And so I've been basically just filling my brain with as much information as I can about this particular region and the elements of World War II that affected this town versus the different theater, what the culture was like during that era, what were some of the political pressures, what were some of the racial issues happening. And so I've just started keeping this notebook of maps and timelines and articles that I've highlighted and things like that, so that when it's time for me to sit down and do my dedicated writing, I have everything I need, at my fingertips, instead of having to go back and search for something as I'm writing or figure out if this thing I want to do would actually work. I'll know because I have all of the information in this notebook. Now, I am a really tactile writer and I'm also really visual. So having the paper and being able to look through the notebook is really helpful. But you might be somebody who you don't want all that paper. I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I like a lot of paper and I like to highlight and write on things. But if that's not you, there are other ways you can keep track of your world. You can use wikis. I know lots of writers who've created those to keep track of their world. You can just keep it all in a Word file. You can use Excel spreadsheets to keep track of your characters. You can draw diagrams. You could do mind maps. I use mind maps quite a bit in my Prosperous Wars series because each book is based on a different alchemical process, so that when I sit down to write one of those, I have the alchemical process it's based on in the center, and then out of that I connect all the different symbols and myths and ideas behind it, and that helps me come up with my storyline. So there's all sorts of really cool tools you can use to develop your world Bible. The only thing that I would caution you against is not falling so in love with developing your world that you don't actually write the story. I think you need to know your broad strokes going in. You need to kind of understand, what kind of people these are, what kind of culture it is, what are the major kind of macro level ideas that you need to know going into this world. Almost like if you were going to go travel there as a tourist, what do you kind of need to know going in? Because the rest of the stuff you learn on the ground, and on the ground is writing the story. So a lot of those micro level details kind of grow out of the big choices and they come up as you're writing. So you may still have to do more research and make more decisions as you're writing the book, and that's okay. The point is, you don't want to use world building as a procrastination tool so that you're not actually getting your story written. And that's where I'm at with this historical novel. Is I've been researching it for a long time. I know I still have more research to do, but I have a good enough idea of the world that I'm dealing with that I can start trying to write the story. And then as I work through subsequent drafts, I'll have to do other research. So I hope that that's helpful. If you have questions about world building Bibles or how I do it or need suggestions, please let me know in comments. Also be sure and check out my website. I have a lot of craft articles and writing life articles and blog posts on www.jaywells.com/craft. There's a ton of information there. And of course, as always, you should subscribe to this channel so that you never miss one of my office hours. Thanks and happy writing.